Welcome to Stonewall Spotlight, a monthly podcast by the Stonewall Democratic Club, covering the most salient issues in Democratic politics from the LGBTQIA and feminist lens. I am Marcus Levengood, your host, and I am joined here by Mackenzie Hussman, my co-host.
I want to start this episode with a quick shout out to all of those who marched with the Stonewall Democratic Club at LA Pride this year. I hear it was our largest turnout yet, so thank you to all who organized it and participated, especially our candidates, Katie Hill, Dave Jones, Alex Villanueva, Maria Elena Durazo, and Anthony Portantino. This was my first time marching in a Pride parade, and I had such a great time. Our Pride booth was quite successful too. Over the course of the weekend, we registered almost 50 new Democratic voters, and we added over 1,300 people to sign up for our mailing list.
But first, let's hear from some of our marchers in the LA Pride Parade.
I'm Anthony Portantino, happy to be here with Stonewall marching in Pride. And, you know, as somebody who grew up in the 70s with an older brother who was gay, I remember, you know, seeing him ostracized as a young kid and watching his civil rights fight and, you know, his march for marriage equality and, you know, just trying to carry on his legacy. We lost him a few years ago, and just happy to be here to support Pride and carry on my family's legacy. My mom actually went on the Millennium March in Washington with my older brother in 2000. So happy to be here at Pride with Stonewall and every year.
And how many years have you been marching?
Marching, about 30 years. I've been involved 34 years. You know, when I started all this, you know, my friends were getting sick. I'd come here from England. My only family were my LGBT family. And when your friends are dying, what else can you do? You drop everything and you do it. And we all got together and we had act up and we were on the streets and we were lying on the streets to protest for our friends, to be with them, and here I am. And this is where we need to be, because now we need to make sure that we continue to have our rights. Our friends who died want to make sure that those who they left behind are taken care of. So here I am. And we can't live on our past, because the past is nice, but it's our present. It's now. It's our future. And so now we're kicking ass to make it happen. People like you that are taking our footsteps.
If I'm ever going down.
The sad news that Soni S.H.S. Wolf, a founding member of Dykes on Bikes, had died at age 69 earlier this year, made our scheduled interview with Marna Deitch, leader of the LA Dyke March, rather bittersweet. According to SF Gate, Wolf was part of a contingent of women on motorcycles who led the San Francisco Gay Freedom Day Parade in 1978. A former Air Force medic, she and her fellow bikers decided to ride their motorcycles in the parade. So that their bikes wouldn't overheat idling behind marchers, they moved to the front of the procession, thereby leading the parade. Informally dubbed Dykes on Bikes, think leather-clad biker culture eloping with DI lesbian chutzpah, and you get the idea of the rebellious independent spirit behind the nickname which stuck. Wolf went on to lead a protracted battle with the U.S. Patent Office to trademark Dykes on Bikes' name and logo. The group finally prevailed in 2017 when the U.S. Supreme Court unanimously decided in Mattel v. Tam that free speech permitted the use of the word, normally pejorative, dyke, in a trademark. There are now 22 Dykes on Bike chapters in the U.S. and internationally, but the ride hasn't always been smooth. Talking about this and more, we turn to our guest. I'm sitting down today with Marna Deitch, a longtime LGBT advocate and proud motorcycle owner. How are you doing today, Marna?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Great. Thanks for coming on the podcast today.
My pleasure.
When we first met at the Stoney Awards a couple months ago, I was very captivated by some of your stories. So I'm hoping that you will share some of those with our listeners today.
Oh, just try to stop me.
So, Marna, you're a longtime rider with the San Francisco Dykes on Bikes. What initially inspired you to ride, and what inspires you today?
Well, actually, I'm not a member of Dykes on Bikes. I've been a longtime supporter of theirs, and I've gone up for a long time. I went up every year to ride with them. What happened for a while was Fresno decided to start a gay pride parade, and the KKK would come out in full regalia, hoods, robes, everything. So they put out a call to San Francisco for their bikers, the lesbian bikers, to come to Fresno and swell their numbers. And a friend of theirs, who was the originator of Dykes on Bikes, L.B. Gunn and Soni Wolf, had friends down here in L.A., contacted those friends, so we would all, every year, meet in Fresno and swell their numbers. And we would go right nose to nose with the KKK. I have some photos of that. But from that, we just started supporting each other throughout the state. So the lesbian motorcyclists throughout the state would go up to San Francisco and support their parade. When I brought back the motorcycles in the parade here, because for a while we were kicked out, San Francisco came down that first year and supported us here also. So we just had a wonderful coalition throughout the state.
That's excellent. I love that. So can you tell me a little bit about your bike? I'm sure there's a story or two there.
Well, I've got a few bikes. It's an awful addiction. Yeah. I still have my first bike, my 1985 Yamaha Virago 700cc. I've ridden that one cross-country 3 times, and actually Brooke Shields used it for a photo shoot once.
That's fantastic.
And it ended up, I saw it on her documentary on the Biography channel, which was fun. I came to L.A. for acting. My motorcycle got on TV first. So I still have that, my longest relationship, 33 years. I also have a 2004 Honda VTX 1300, which is kind of a beast of a bike, and I've used that for cross-country 2 times and up to the Arctic Circle and back through Alaska once. And then a friend just gave me a bike that she can't ride anymore because she got ill, unfortunately. So I'm rebuilding a 1982 Honda Twin Star.
Excellent. So can you compare and contrast for me what the Pride marches were like then and now, or even what the Los Angeles scene was like in recent decades compared to now?
There's been major changes. I got started in the early 80s in New York City. And back then what Pride was, it wasn't corporations. It wasn't, it was to show our numbers. And at the beginning, I think we met up at Central Park, and we would march down Fifth Avenue to Christopher Street, the name Christopher Street. Pride, well, here it's Christopher Street West. There it's Christopher Street Liberation Day Committee. It was to show our numbers. So if we saw people on the sidewalk or up in the buildings, cheering us on, I just remember our chant at the time was out of the closets and into the streets. The idea was to show how many of us there were, so you can't stop us.
Right.
As time went on, corporations started supporting us, which at that time was wonderful to get that corporation money in there, for a corporation to realize the gay dollar is powerful.
Yeah, because now we have in the Pride Parade, we had Netflix, Chipotle, Disney.
Exactly. Now, though, I'd say it might have swung very far in that direction. A lot of people do have their point of view on that it's become extremely strong corporation and not as much Pride. But it's become a celebration which we still need. I'm not against the celebration, but I love that last year we went back to our roots and we marched again. And because I was in the front for the Resist March last year, I was pacing it on the motorcycle. And I remember thinking, there's not a lot of people on the sidewalk. And then I realized, oh my God, this is what it was. They're all behind me. There were 100,000 people marching with us.
I marched as well, yeah.
Wonderful, yeah. So I think that's the big difference. It began as a march for us, and it's become a march maybe to entertain us. So now we'll see new people are coming in here to organize the parade, and we're going to see what direction they take it.
So how did the Dyke March originate here in LA? Because I know that was this Friday for the Pride.
The Dyke March has gone through a lot of different changes here. It has difficulty sustaining here. It began with Vivian Escalante, Vivian and I were the ones that brought back the motorcycles in the parade here. I'm sorry, I'm going to jump around a little few stories here. So what happened was the motorcyclists in the Gay Pride Parade here used to be in the middle of the parade. And one year, it's very difficult to ride motorcycles very slowly in parades. That's one of the reasons why the bikers are up front, because it can be dangerous because we're holding onto our clutch for a very long time. And I guess one biker lost control of the clutch and hit the vehicle in front of them, the float in front of them, which just happened to be Morris Kite's float, who was the founder of the gay pride parades. So for the longest time, we got kicked out of the parade.
Oh, dear.
So I can't remember exactly the year. It might have been 93 or 94. Vivian and I got together and we fought, and we got the motorcycles back in the parade. And that same year, I believe, Vivian started working on the Dyke March. And it began at the corner of Santa Monica Boulevard and Doheny, just at the border of Beverly Hills. And we had it was impromptu. And we got a lot of people, and a lot of the bikers from San Diego came up and joined us, from Fresno and from San Francisco. For some reason, that personalities didn't gel well with the organizers, and that group moved to East LA, and then another group came into West Hollywood and started organizing the parade, and they got it attached to Christopher Street West, so was able to use the festival. At first, it was just outside the gates of the festival. And then as years went on and it grew, they got it inside and were able to use the main stage for Friday night. But then 2 years ago, the festival people decided that they wanted Friday night to become like a Coachella music festival. And the Dyke March got literally kicked to the curb. So the city of West Hollywood, bless their hearts, picked it up. And they are the ones that ran it this year.
Excellent. Well, I hope it continues, because I enjoyed marching in that one.
There's
as well.
A few of us that are helping them, helping it grow.
So, Marna, I'm curious, when and what inspired or motivated you to become an activist in the community?
That's an easy question to answer, and the answer is I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
But my brother tells a story, and my brother is also gay. And he was he was the founding secretary for GLAAD.
Oh.
So my brother is also an activist, and I always was curious how both of us ended up being so strong in this direction. He tells a story of one day my father came home from work. My father worked in a law firm that focused on estate law. And he came home and he said, okay, Philip, Marna, little family meeting. I need to tell you who our new clients were today. The Reverend Abernathy, Martin Luther King, and Coretta Scott King. So Philip, Marna, what are you going to do with your lives? And my brother, who was 3 years older, right away started, I'm trying to remember what organization he started in high school, but it was an equal rights organization. And I think being the little sister, I kind of watched him and was probably very influenced by him. And saying that, you mentioned my name at the beginning. My brother and the rest of the family pronounces it, my brother's Philip Deitch. And when I was in New York, and people always mispronounce the name, I remember someone once pronounced my name as Marna Deitch. And I looked at him and said, well, you might be right, but you're wrong. It's Deitch. But people always also mispronounce it as Deitch. So I just went, I kind of like that sound better. And I went as Marna Deitch. So now we introduce ourselves. This is Philip Deitch and his sister, Marna Deitch.
Well, there you go. So could you please share with us a little bit about your coming out story?
I knew from 8th grade. And I graduated high school in 1975. To be gay back then, well, first off, gay was so looked down upon, dangerous, life-threatening. But lesbian, there was no word for that. There was no role model of that. No one even knew that existed. So I had no idea really what these feelings were. But I knew they were true. And I remember also in high school kind of watching my brother going, something's different there. But I kept it very quiet. And I remember for the longest time, I just knew in my gut that I was gay. And when I was a freshman in college, it's funny how you handle it in yourself. When I was a freshman in college, I realized it in my brain that I was gay. Then for a while, I was able to sort of, with my mouth closed, say it, form the words, but not with open lips. Then I was finally able to say it with an open lip and not with noise. And when I finally said it to myself out loud for the first time, it was the most powerful thing. When I was a senior in college, the day that I was graduating, my brother and I got together, and at that time, both of our parents were ill, and they both actually passed away that year. So my brother and I were talking about how their illnesses were affecting us, and he sounded like he was beating around the bush about a topic. To me, it sounded like a very familiar beat around the bush. And I said, Phil, tell me everything. And he said, you don't want to know everything. At which point I knew. And I said, yeah, tell me everything. He went, all right. I finally fell in love. And his name is also Philip. And I just cracked up laughing. He was so hurt that I was laughing. And I said, Phil, you and I go through the same experiences at the same time, and her name's Luann.
Not Marna.
No, not Marna. But at the same time, before we came out, we had a mutual friend named George who was so out. He was in Florida when the whole Anita Bryant thing happened. So he became militant, and your readers should know about that also, the whole Anita Bryant time. But I'm calling George going, George, I'm gay. I know I'm gay. I don't know how my brother's going to handle this. At the same time, Philip is calling George going, I'm gay. I don't know how Marna's going to handle this. And George is saying, I think he'll handle it fine. Tell him. And the same to my brother. But neither one of us told each other till that day. And George had to keep our secret for a year before we finally came out to each other.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, what a powerful story. So I hear there's also another story you have to share about Ivy and the Statue of Liberty.
Oh, Ivy Bettini is someone your listeners really need to educate themselves on. She's been a resident of West Hollywood for years, grew up in New York, and she was the, I don't know if she was the first president of New York's National Organization of Women or the second president, but she did get kicked out from National Organization of Women with what they called the Lavender Menace, when Betty Friedan didn't want anyone lesbian to have anything to do with the women's movement, and Ivy got kicked out. But before that, when she was president, I'm trying to remember exactly how she tells this story, and I love listening to her story. She's hysterical. I guess she was in a bar, and she saw two of her National Organization women, and they were all having a couple of drinks, and these women said, we need to do something. Let's go out and throw paint at the penises on statues or things like that. And they went, no, that's not the good thing to do. And they said, well, then let's just shut down the Statue of Liberty. Don't take it verbatim. I'm just trying to remember exactly. And Ivy, with a few drinks on her, said, yeah, let's go do that. And she was thinking, this isn't going to happen. You know, we're just in a bar having a few drinks. And she says, well, the next day, these two women started forming a committee. And as she words it, once lesbians start forming a committee, it's going to happen. So what they did was they made a banner that said, Women of the World Unite. And it was broken down into each letter. And it was each letter was huge. And they, each woman would take one or two banners and kind of hid it under their shirts so they looked pregnant. And they got on a ferry to Liberty Island, and everyone just thought, here's these, very sweet pregnant women.
Taking a tour of the Statue of Liberty.
But wondering how these pregnant women are walking up the steps to the Statue of Liberty. At the same time, another group of women got off the ferry and just started playing guitars at the base. It's just sort of a diversion. And the women with the banners went up to the top, and each one of them hung a banner off the side, and it read, Women of the World Unite. It made the news in Europe. It was buried here in the United States. Oh. So you can actually Google and you can find a photo or two of the women. The fire department, National Guard, police, I don't know who, on ferries started going towards Liberty Island to try to stop this. But I believe they actually ended up being so sweet, they kind of waited, They let the women do it, and then they just escorted them back to the mainland.
Wow, I would love to talk to Ivy about
must.
that, to hear it right from her.
She's got, you need to interview her for a week. And even
I'm
that,
sure.
you won't get it all. And Ivy, by the way, is if you know the logo for National Organization of Women, that green N with a larger O and W.
Yep.
Ivy is the one who designed that logo.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah.
So I know you're going up to San Francisco Pride to ride this weekend.
I am.
What are you most looking forward to?
There was supposed to be this year, the Grand Marshal for San Francisco Parade was supposed to be Soni Wolf, who unfortunately passed away 2 months ago. Soni went to the Supreme Court twice to fight for the right to own the trademark for the name Dykes on Bikes. She wanted to make sure that no one could use that name in a derogatory way. She wanted to protect
Taking ownership of that word.
Take ownership of it, yeah. So what a lot of people don't realize, because it's like a generic phrase, sort of like we say, oh, give me a Kleenex, or let's go make a Xerox copy.
Right.
Dykes on Bikes is actually a trademark name owned now by the club in San Francisco, Dykes on Bikes. So since she didn't make it to the parade, they're going to have a memorial to her. So Dykes on Bikes in San Francisco invited me to join them on stage, and they're going to do a 5-minute tribute to Soni.
Well, I hope you have a good weekend.
Soni and I known each other 30 years, very close friends, and it's a very bittersweet
I'm sure.
to be there.
Well, I do appreciate you sitting down with us today.
Oh, my pleasure.
And yeah, it's been a pleasure as well.
We'll do it again, because I've got a dozen more stories just like Ivy.
Please. Thank you, Marna.
My pleasure. I am Marna Deitch, and I am Stonewall.